news team. This is Fox 6 News at 6.
Good evening, I'm Sarah Verser.
And I'm Andrea Lindenberg. Art Franklin is on assignment. Thanks for joining us this evening. Tropical storm Josephine is the first storm to threaten the Gulf Coast this hurricane season. Our Fox 6 crew is in the northwest part of Florida tonight, reporting from Apalachicola Bay. John Carroll joins us from the storm's path. John, what is the latest?
Well, the latest is that we are now here in Apalachicola Bay at a town called Panacea, and it looks like we're getting some wind gusts right now, probably close to about 50 miles an hour. The big problem with this storm system is going to be what we call the storm surge. Apalachicola Bay is a relatively shallow body of water, so what happens is the winds will move across the surface of the water, and then it'll pick up some of that water and kind of push it inland. And as it does push it inland, of course, that's when you're going to have the flooding. Since we've been here about the past 20 minutes, I've seen the water rise about 6 or 7 feet just a little bit further inland. The boats behind me over here to the right, they haven't really battened down the hatches here yet. You can see the mast kind of swinging back and forth. This town relies on the sea for survival. It is an oyster town. They do a lot of harvesting of oysters here, and they're not going to do much harvesting today because the winds are kicking up very, very nasty. And I'll tell you, it's a very, very treacherous situation.
John, have most people evacuated, John, or do you see a lot of folks riding out the storm down there?
There are still a lot of people. They've gone through this numerous times. Apparently, they have well-prepared houses for this. The houses are up on pylons, and really, for the most part, we haven't really seen many people evacuate. In fact, we have a little bit of a crowd watching us out here on this pier. Andrea?
Spectator sport down there. John, you stay safe down there, and we'll check back in with you at 9.
Okay.
But she's not a hurricane.
No.
The worst of Tropical Storm Josephine is headed for Florida's Gulf Coast.
Well, the storm's outlying parts here near Apalachicola near around 6 o'clock this evening. The center probably won't hit shore for a few hours further down Florida's Gulf Coast.
Fox 6 weatherman John Carroll is on Apalachee Bay.
So, John, how are things where you are now?
Well, the storm is still packing quite a wallop right now. We just had a pretty good wind gust, probably up to around 50 or so miles an hour. There were possible reports of some tornadic activity in the area as well. The thing that everybody seems to be concerned about also is the fact that at about midnight, we'll have a high tide here, which could lend itself to bringing some of this water atop the bulkheads here. So it looks as if really the worst is not over yet here, but we are keeping an eye on it. In fact, earlier today, there was a lot of problems you could see when the sun was out, and it was a pretty nasty scenario. A lot of the boats, really, they didn't do too much damage to the boats, actually, just a lot of knocking around. The folks here tied them down very, very well. It was a voluntary evacuation here in our region, and what's happening is people just decided to stick around. In fact, the storm popped up so rapidly that the fire chief here has this to say about that.
Yeah, it popped up quick, and normally you got more warning than this, but
that's right. So what had occurred was that this storm built up very, very quickly from about 4 o'clock this morning till 7 o'clock. It went from 35-mile-an-hour winds, 50-mile-an-hour winds, then to 70-mile-an-hour sustained winds. So a very quick developing storm that is not necessarily exiting as fast as the folks around here would like. Andrea, Art?
Well, and John, still danger coming because high tide 3 hours away. Are the evacuees coming back home yet?
Not too many people had actually left, so yeah, everybody's kind of still hanging around. And when it does come in, it really isn't anticipated to go that much higher than these bulkheads. So really, not a lot of widespread flooding is anticipated.
John, you be careful there. We can see that it's already blowing you around there. So
yeah, it's still kind of windy out here, folks.
Be careful out there, buddy. All right, okay. We'll see you later. And Josephine may do its major damage on Florida.
Just a moment. Scott, Janet.
All right, thank you, David. Well, John Carroll has been on the Florida coast since the storm hit.
He joins us now from the water's edge in Panacea, Florida. John?
Thank you very much, Scott and Janet. Yeah, we are out here in the marina, just taking a little breather from the elements outside. And what happens a lot of times when there are a lot of problems going on, people kind of band together. And a lot of these gentlemen here have been kind of banding together, keeping the boats kind of tied in. Now, how rough are the seas out there? This is Dave. He's a sailor out there. Tell us about the seas.
They're worse now than they've been all night. Right now under our boats, we probably have 5-6 feet right in the dock. And if the tide stays down, we ought to be okay, but it's getting real rough.
Okay, so we're still having the storm surge still continuing to come in. In fact, we're going to take a walk outside right now And what we'll notice is that we have had a little bit of a problem. There was a boat that broke free and it moved off into this bulkhead here. And I don't know if you can see it out there in the darkness, but it's a houseboat that has moved in. And also, we still over here to my right, there is a lot of the storm surge continuing to come in, riding over top of the bulkhead. The high tide is not until about 12 o'clock, so we are still anticipating these waters to rise just a little bit. It was a voluntary evacuation. A lot of people are still here, but the water is still rising. Scott, Janet?
John, with that water rising like that, how much flooding are they expecting?
They're not expecting too much more flooding from this, although it will rise about another foot or so and approach the top of the bulkhead. But really, it doesn't seem to be all that bad. They've had worse here, but this still isn't over yet. Lots of wind, and we'll have to be assessing the damage a little bit later on. We'll assess that for you tomorrow.
John Carroll reporting live from Panacea, Florida. Thank you very much, John.